Yep. Good evening, everyone. So, yesterday we learned last session what we discussed about all the APIs. In our previous session, we learned about working with Express.js APIs. How do we configure APIs and API methods? So, we learned about routing and API requests. So these concepts we learned related to Express and we discussed about CORS, how to implement the CORS middleware. So we created one example with all the CRUD operations. CRUD operation, we learned how to insert, read, update and delete. Actually, server side, whatever you design, client side we communicate by using any client side technology. In reality, in general, actually what you learn client side to communicate with API, you learn fetch. By using fetch, in JavaScript you learned XML, HTTP request. Another one is a fetch. We learned about those two concepts. But in real-time projects, they don't directly use the fetch APIs or XML, HTTP, or actually they don't use JavaScript. Then in the front end, what they use, you learned all JavaScript, but in reality, they don't use JavaScript to consume these APIs. They use jQuery or Angular or React or Vue-like technologies. Earlier, majority of web applications in the front end for consuming these APIs, they were using jQuery very much. Even today, lot of web applications already using jQuery. Now we are migrating from jQuery to React-like technology. In React, you will learn how to handle these CRUD operations by using database and all. You will understand. But without React also, a UI full stack developer have to know about how to consume API. For consuming API in the front end, we have to use jQuery. So let's see how to use this API and handle all the CRUD operations with front end. So in our project, what we designed, so in our project, we created the backend server. So server app that we designed, in this complete API, I showed you how to manage. We created an API to handle all the interactions here. Now, in this, what is the job of CORS? It is used for handling requests from client. It is used for managing the requests from client. We can restrict or we can allow certain type of requests by using what? CORS. If your server side application is not using CORS, then if it is not using CORS, then it will not allow post, put and delete. Only get is allowed. By mistake, if you are not using course, it will not allow you to post. You created this API, all of you done this API. You created all the CRUD methods. You tested using Postman like tool. You have to do that. So once you are testing, while testing, do one thing. You remove this course and a body parser and you try posting. Then you will see your post, put, delete methods will fail. But get method will be working fine because post, put, delete methods require to enable what course. You have to enable this course. Now we need to use the course and express and consume this API and create one user interface. Actually, user interface we create. Where we create the user interface? User interface we generally create in a public folder. You will have static files like images, index.html, all these. So in our project now, we are adding a new folder. What is that folder? Public. We are adding the new folder called public. Now in this public folder, we will have a page. What is the page? Index.what.html. This is the startup page. So we will give the title as index.html. Now in this page, we want to use the API. Actually, in public, you can have all static resources. What are those? Images, documents, and HTML pages, everything we can have. But what is the problem is actually, suppose you see this API.js, we kept in which folder? We kept in SRC folder. And here some HTML is there, we will delete it. Actually, all HTML is now recommended to keep inside the public folder. So now this is, you remembered I told you we have a development environment, production environment. In production environment, so many folders will not be there. Only one folder will be there. In that folder, all the resources are kept. Generally, in development environment, we will have separate folders. Later, I will show you production means how to deploy. We will see deployment on cloud. When we see deployment on cloud, you can see that, how to handle that. Generally, what happens now? In the public, there are some static resources. We want to access them. Actually, you start this API. What is this API? So we are running the API cd src and node api.js. When we start this API and you see this API will allow only these requests, whatever request you mentioned here, only this. It will not allow to access any other. That means suppose now once it is started, I will open that in a browser. In the browser, we are accessing, you see it says cannot get because you don't have a route for that. Only you have routes like what? / what is it? Categories. It is going to get the categories and show. But I will try to access here the file. What is the file? Index.what.html. It's not able. You see index.html is in which folder? Public folder. In that index.html. So it is unable to access. We are unable to access the other resources because your API your server side application is designed to access only the routes. But without accessing the static files, without accessing the index HTML page, then how you will design UI? Because your application needs a front end as well as back end. In the front end, you will have images, CSS, you will have JavaScript, jQuery, you will have HTML pages in the front end. Now the backend API, the backend application is not ready to use any front end static resources. For that, we need one more concept. And what is that concept is here? We need to learn about express static resources. We need to understand about express static resources. Express static resources. So what is the point is, a server side application, designed using Node and Express comprises of API routes. A server-side application designed using Node and Express comprises of API routes. It can respond to the requests and serve the routes. It can respond, It can respond to the requests and serve the routes. It can respond to the requests and serve the routes. It cannot access other static resources. It cannot access other static resources like CSS, HTML. So SAS, actually SAS is SCSS, etc. And SAS, images, all this comes under that. Images, docs, etc. Now, how do you make the server-side application to access the static resources so that it can use the client-side, server-side? You can say that it can use the client-side interactions. Actually, so you have to configure static resources for server-side app. You have to configure static resources for server-side app by using express.static method. You have to use this express.static method. Express.static method. So generally, this index.html is having like index, just a heading is there. Individually we can run this, but server side application is unable to access it. Individually it will work. Individually how it is going to work? So individually how this works is you can directly access through another server. Open with live server. It starts in another port number and it will use it. But it should not be another port number. It should be on same. Client side, server side, it should be same. But it is individually working on another port number. So actually we can do that. I will stop this. We can make our server side application to use those static resources. So what we have to do is, let's stop this. And we need to define here. App is already using CORS. Now we need to define app.use express.static. We have static. And it is expecting the root folder. Which folder it should use for static? And what is the folder that contains static resources? The folder that contains static resources is what? Public. We need to configure that public. That means now our server side application is able to use the static resources defined inside public folder. Not only public, you can have different folders. If there are many folders where all static resources are separately kept, you can mention all those folders one below another. Multiple also you can define. So here, when I say that public, here still some issue will be there. You see now I am running node app.js. Now here I am requesting 4040 and it is not getting anything. Here I am requesting / what is it? Public. Public is the folder, and public folder is also not accessible, and in that index.html that is also not accessible. After configuring the public as static, still it is unable to access. Why? Because actually what happens generally is the resources that you kept here, I will log in here. Yeah. Actually, the resources you kept here, you see these SRC, it can access the resources of public directly only. That means you have to make sure that these all are present in one location, or this is in the root level, because public is a root level folder. It is in the root level. So this API.js we actually kept in which location? SRC. Generally it will be API.js or index.js. Only one file will be there, but during the testing process I created so many files, right? Actually we will have only one file. And what is that file? Index.js. Traditionally, as of now you can keep any number of files, but see, I will copy this in the root level. I am copying into the root level, so it is not in SRC. Now it can access the public directly. So I will come out, and here we are using node API.what.js. Now server started here, and in this, as of now, for the root request, directly index will come. That means you don't need to mention now. Automatically when you request the original resource, it will access which folder? Default which folder is set up? Default public. In public, you know, in any folder, if there is index.html, it is startup na. You can have different pages, but application will not start with them. Application will start with which page? Index.html. That means I kept public as startup, then auto means public as static. Then whenever I request, automatically that index will come now. That means we can make our server side application to use the static resources. Otherwise, server side application cannot use static resources. Server side application can contain both backend API as well as the front end user interface. That means in one application you are using both. Actually, what happens in future when you're working with React and all, your React application will be running on different port number. Your server side API running on different port number, different location, both communicate with each other. But now what we have done, the user interface and the API all are in one location. Now our application is a complete end-to-end application. That means from the front end and back end, everything is in one location. And we can even access the UI. Now, whenever anybody requests this UI, means requests your path, automatically it will start with index page. And when it starts with index page, in the index page, you can put the UI. All the UI you can keep here. UI means consuming the API, interacting with the API, everything you can do. But in real-time projects, as I told you, UI will not use JavaScript. We can use JavaScript now. Suppose I want to get all the categories and show the categories here in a drop-down. Then already you learned JavaScript. You can use the JavaScript methods and do that. How you will do? How you will do? You learned JavaScript methods. Suppose I want to display the categories here. I will put a drop-down. Into the drop-down, I want to load all the categories. Then how do we write the logic? In drop-down, I want to use the logic. So temporarily, I am writing a script. And here we will have, what is it? On load, what is that? Body load. We have a function. What is it? Body load. On body load, we need to fetch. Fetch from where? http://127.001:4040/ what? Categories, categories. Dot then get the response and return the response into JSON. After that, then get the categories, and these categories we have to use a map. So categories dot map, we have to read every category. For every category, what we need to do? For every category, we need to create an option. And what is that? Document dot create element. Create element, what is it? Option. And option dot text is equal to category dot category name. We need to get the category name because category have category ID and category name. Okay, next option dot value is equal to category dot what? Category name. Value also category name. Now document dot query selector, we need to access select, and we need to define what? Append child. Append child. Append child. Which one? Option. That means it is going to add all the categories and display the categories here. This is from the API. It is bringing all the categories and showing. That means now the front end and back end is completely in one app. The back end API is also working. The front end UI, user interface, also working. And here the concept is actually, here you can see I am using body load, I am using fetch, I am using communication. This already you learned in JavaScript. In JavaScript, you learned how to create elements, how to add elements dynamically, everything we learned this. So working with API is already not new thing, already you done in your JavaScript, but there what you done? you used ready-made APIs. So here we have our own API. Now, in reality, we will not use JavaScript for user interface, for creating user interface. What we do, we use jQuery for interface. So if you learned already JavaScript, learning jQuery is also important. Actually, in your general syllabus, now people are not teaching jQuery much, but I will take some time to make you understand about that, because without jQuery, you cannot claim as a web developer. Many people are now ignoring jQuery and they are going directly with React.js. But majority companies are still using jQuery. And an experienced web developer means he cannot put his resume without jQuery. It's mandatory to mention about jQuery. Anyhow, you will learn React, but you have to know about jQuery also, how to build the UI. And for building the user interface and consuming these APIs. What is jQuery? I will explain. We will see. Now we will build one API and we will build the front end for the API using not JavaScript, using what? jQuery. For that, we need to learn jQuery functions, how it handles, right? Let's see. First point is how to serve the static resources. So syntactically, serving the static resources, you need to do this. So first, actually, you have a constant express, require express. After that, you have a constant app which uses express. And this app have to use express dot what? Static. The folder name. You have to define the folder name. Right. So you can use the static. Actually, example, I will explain the process. You can try. First, add a new folder, public. So with index.html. Then add script file into root level by name some index.js. Add script file into root level by name index.js. So in this index.js, you can configure static and static resources and APIs. You can configure static resources and APIs. Both you can define here. Configure static resources and APIs. So I will copy the code. Index.js is nothing but you will have all the API code, whatever API code that we designed. I will copy this API code. And this is the API code. And index.html with JavaScript. Index.html with JavaScript, it can consume. I will copy that index.html with the JavaScript, which will consume the API and will use that API. So now what we have to do, one more last thing is you have to run your API, run your index.js, node index.js, and you request localhost and 4040. This is going to serve which page? Index.html. By default, it is going to access which folder? Public. And in that public folder, if there is index.html, automatically it starts with index.html. You can keep all the static resources in public and you can access them. That means you can have images, documents, and everything inside this. So one, use just to start your API and automatically the front end also available. You can communicate from the front end and back end. Now, actually in index.html, we are just using fetch. By using fetch, we are fetching the data. And generally we don't use this fetch also to handle the complete communication. So we use jQuery with jQuery Ajax. We have jQuery Ajax, we use that. So for freshers, some companies are currently asking, but experienced people compulsory they have to mention. That means I will show you. So if you observe the Naukri sites and you search for full stack web developer, actually Java developer or any full stack developer means in several locations, these are different technologies actually. These days, Angular, React are compulsory, but some projects are still using jQuery. For experienced people, they ask jQuery. You see, web developer must have knowledge of what? jQuery. JavaScript is okay and jQuery is required. You will find so many applications, so many projects are asking for jQuery. So many will be there, but the majority these days, they will expect knowledge of what? React or Angular. And you see, this is React and Laravel, and you see the full stack, they are asking for jQuery. And for experienced people, jQuery is compulsory to understand. You have to better keep that in your resumes. So you will not really use direct JavaScript anywhere. You will use jQuery only. I will show you how do we handle that jQuery and create the UI. So what we have to do now, we need to learn how to build a complete UI for handling all the CRUD operations. What are all the CRUD operations? Inserting record, updating the record, and deleting the record. So for that, what you do is backend API already we designed. Now we learned through that API how to serve the static resources. Now we need to design the interface so that we can build one end-to-end application. One more just idea I will give you before going into that front end. In practical tests, when you go to companies, In companies, they cannot give you a database. They cannot give you server side scripting. Then what they do is they say that we cannot give you database and server side access. You show us how to design CRUD operations in the front end by using any built-in servers. Actually, to create these APIs, you have a server called JSON server. You have a JSON server. You can use this JSON server. What this JSON server will do, it will build complete API with data using JSON. Now, majority of your practical interviews, you have to use this server. That means they will not give you a chance to work with Express.js and MongoDB. Even you learnt it. Even you mentioned that I know backend MongoDB, Express.js. They will say that, so no need of designing any database, no need of writing any business logic. You design one ready-made API and use that API for the designing of front end. They ask that. And for that, we have a server called JSON server. What this JSON server can do, it can create APIs, it can create all the API routes, it can maintain data, it will maintain data in a JSON file. That means you don't need any database. Locally, you can maintain data, you can maintain the APIs without really using server-side technology. And the front end you can build and you can use that front end. So that is the reason you should also know how to use this JSON server for APIs. Currently, we created our own API. How ready-made APIs we can get by using this JSON server also, I will show you. It is just an idea you should have. Later in React and everywhere you can try this. You can use it. I will show you how to use the JSON server. What is this JSON server now is, this JSON server, so it configures a local server. It configures a local server with data and APIs. It configures a local server with data and APIs. It configures a local server with the data and APIs. Now, what is data? Actually, data is locally maintained. Data is locally maintained in a JSON file. Locally maintained in a JSON file. APIs are generated. APIs are generated. APIs are generated implicitly for the data designed in JSON file. API routes are implicitly configured for handling all requests like get, post, put, and delete. Get, post, delete, etc. All this. So in current example, what we are doing, in current example, we have our own database our own server side logic. We created all API methods. That is very good. That means as a developer, you know how to communicate with database, how to get the data, and how do you show the data. But they don't have this chance in conducting interviews and practical tests to you. That means while conducting practical tests and in interviews, what they do is they can't provide you all that. That means database and all these they can't provide. So then they will simply say that create locally one JSON server, set up it and maintain data in it, create API and design the user interface and show us CRUD operations on that user interface. So for that, what you have to do, you can use this JSON server. How to use the JSON server? First, what you have to do is, so first point, install JSON server globally. On your device. So npm means in your command prompt, anywhere in your command prompt, npm install globally JSON server. You have to use that JSON server. npm install globally JSON server. After that, what you have to do is, this is G for globally. This allows you to use this from any project. Later in Angular, React or JavaScript, jQuery, any project, you can use this JSON server. So what you have to do, open your command prompt and in the command prompt, you have to install npm install JSON server globally JSON server. You can install JSON server global. Once you install the JSON server globally, yeah. So it is successfully installed on your PC. In any project you can use. Any project. Later you will use in different projects also. How to use in our projects is, now next step, go to your application. Go to your application physical path and add a new JSON file for data. Actually, you can use any name. I'm using db.json. You have to use JSON file. And in this, how to maintain data is, we have to maintain like this. This is categories. It is an array of objects you can have. Now we have products. This is array of objects related to products. We have users and this is related to users. Like this, we need to maintain data. That means what is first one? Categories, it is considered as a table. Categories is a table. Here we have three data tables now. One categories, another products, another users. So you have to create a JSON file like this. And in this JSON file, you have categories. Categories is one collection. That means it is considered as a table. Products is a collection. It is considered as a table. Means how many tables you want, how many collections you want, those you have to design as keys. And under every key you have values. You need to maintain that. And one more important is actually uh, every here important every record in data, every record in data comprises of ID as primary key. Means automatically one ID will be generated. ID as primary key. That means just like in MongoDB you saw two index ID will be generated. Here also for every record one ID will be generated. One ID field will be generated. And it is used as what? Primary key. It can be used as primary key. So after maintaining your data, so what you have to do now, let's see. I will now stop this application, okay? Because JSON server is installed in my computer. Anywhere in any project, we can set up the JSON. You see now in SRC, I am adding a folder, a new file, db dot what JSON. I am creating a db JSON file. And how to design the data? An object in that key. Key is suppose what? Categories. Categories is an array. In this array of objects, every category have an ID and some ID, and every category have a name. So name and category name is something like suppose I give an electronics, something like this. We can maintain the details like this. Another ID is 2 and another name is some footwear. Like this you are having. Now we have another data called what? Products. Products is an array. In that every product needs an ID and it needs some product have a type. So some name and product have some price. Like this we are adding some data. Some price, we are defining some data like this. Okay, let's add 1, 2 records like this. And this is like some mobile. And this is second. And it is having some price. Fine. Now our data contains two tables. One categories, another one products. Now what we need to do is, after you configured, open this location in terminal, open in integrated terminal. Now what you have to do, just run. Actually by default, the server runs on 3000 port number. Here what you do, JSON server and which file? db.json and you can use watch. Watch is used for continuously watching the request and sending the response. And another one, port number. You can tell which port number to use. Suppose I am using 5050, some port number. Now when I use that port number, enter. Now everything ready. That means you can see JSON server started on port number 5050. And what is the interesting is all API endpoints it created. All API endpoints it created. What products will do? It will return products. What categories will do? It will return categories. Remember, all methods, insert, update, delete, all are ready. Everything is ready. That means automatically what are the requests here? Once you do this, now start the API. How do you start this? Start JSON server like this. We have JSON server JSON server. In that db.json, you have to use watch and some port number. That's it. So API endpoints are auto-generated. API endpoints are auto-generated. That means http:// localhost 5050/categories. This is what get all categories. Not only that, it will automatically have categories/1. This is also get specific category. Automatically it is designed. Means automatically these methods are generated. And you have categories of categories. This is designed for post also. Post into categories. You have another option, categories of one. This is put into categories. We have again categories/1. This is delete from categories. That means all methods are built in ready. You have to just use them. That means API methods are automatically generated. Previously what we done, these all methods we manually created, but now this server will create everything for you. Just you have to use them. That is the reason interviews will mainly ask this. In interviews they say that don't waste time in designing database, writing server side API logics and all, because you are applying for jobs as UI full stack developer. If they see this in their profile, they will give first priority to you in the UI only, not in the backend. That means you will not have much chance to work in MongoDB, MySQL, Node.js, very rare. You apply for jobs as UI full stack developer, 100% out of 195 people will get to work only on UI. Very rarely in some companies they need some database designers or server side people, then they will put you in the jobs of Node and MongoDB. Otherwise, your job will be in the front end only. Because in your profile you put React. That means UI full stack with React. Then automatically React means their majority of work will be front end. Because if they see React in your profile, they will take you as React developer. And when they are taking as React developer, very less they have to know about your database skills. They will just ask basic. And they will not even ask you to practically show anything on database. They will simply ask you everything in the front end. For backend, while testing you, they will say that create one JSON server with some data and you show us. So this you have to know how to maintain a JSON server, how to maintain the data and use it. Observe carefully. We just created this data file. We created this data file. All the APIs are ready. Let's run this and see where it is running. So it is running in 5050. So 5050 it is running. And observe carefully now. I will open Postman. Because from a browser we can test only which requests. From a browser we can test only get request. So I will open this Postman. Yeah, in this postman, so I will delete all. Yeah, and let's take a new file and observe now this time http colon double slash localhost 5050 slash I'm using categories. I'm using categories or I'm using products, anything. And you see, I search for the products, then it is going to get the data and show. The API methods are ready-made working. And you see, I say products slash 2, then it will get only the second product and show. That means this API route is also working. Suppose I will select here post. In the post, what I am doing, products. Okay. How to post the data? We don't have front end. And then what you do is actually you can post the data as raw. You can post the data. You have the body now. You can post the data. Suppose ID number 3 in the body, you go to raw. In the raw, you have to post the data here. That means ID number 3. I will remove this and put the data newly. This is, yeah, here we need to put the data. What is ID? ID is what? 3. Okay, what is another product? Name, title, title. Title, I given something like watch. Okay, next what? Price. Price is some price. Now after defining this data, it is on which method? Post. And we send and it is sent. And after sent, you can see in your DB file, in the DB file that is added here. That means in the database it is added. Post method is working fine. That means you don't need Node.js, Express.js and all. Just one JSON file. You maintain the JSON file, server is ready, API is ready, all API methods ready. Because majority of interviews people, they know that you learned, you can do it. And they don't want you to waste time in showing up your database skills because you are a UI developer. Then they will say that just use this local server and create one data and concentrate more on UI. In the front end design, all the forms, interactions, everything, they will ask you to do that. That's the reason this is important. Some companies don't even do that. Some companies, what they do, they say that don't use any JSON server, use your local storage, session storage. In JavaScript, you learned local storage, session storage, na? Local storage, you can store data in local storage, session storage, and cookies. In some companies, interviews, what they do, they will ask like, create one local storage, store the data in that storage, access the data from there and display. They don't even ask a JSON server. But this is very much important. Here all works. Now see now, I'm going to which method? Instead of post method, I'm going to put. In the put method, now I will go to products slash 3. That means the third product I need to change as suppose some fossil watch, something like this I'm giving. I'm changing the price. Some price I am changing like this. And what I am doing, send. This is on put request. It is sent. You can see the JSON file modified. It is not found. Why it is not found? ID is 3 only now. It is showing not found. What is this? So this is some 2. on put request. So what we have to do, the second one is something. Okay. That is modified. I think somewhere I missed to reload the page. That's fine. Now you can see here, I am making modification in which product? Number 2. And what is it? Put method. And what it has to do? Send the data. Why 3 not working? 3, modify 3 and change this to what? Fossil watch, and some price also we are changing, and send. It's not showing. Why? Acha, here one problem is whatever data you added here, it is showing number type. It is actually stored as what? String type. I copied the data as string previously. Better you keep this data as what type? Number type. Better you keep the data number type. I copied that as string type. That is the reason. Actually, if it is string type, so you have to access using string only. Na? This also defined as a string. Okay. Later we will put as number. Then it is string type and send, that is modified. That means you can see it is modified because the data type is wrong. Fine. Now how to delete it? Delete also same option. Which method? Delete. Delete product number 3. Then send. Then it is going to delete it, and you see the product number 3 is deleted. It's not there. That means from the JSON it is removed and it is displayed. You define whatever data you want. You can configure any data according to that. It will implement, right? So these are the API methods. You need to understand how they are generated. This is using what? A local JSON server. So we have our own methods. We created our own methods using Express, and we have our built-in methods. Built-in methods we maintained by using what? JSON server. You need to know about both techniques. Once you know about these two, what is the next job? Our job is designing the UI. We have to learn how to create the UI for these APIs, whether it is JSON server or your own API, how to create the user interface to make them all work. So how to make them all work? So we will see with the concept of jQuery. But before going into jQuery, some more Express concepts are there. We have to learn, because once we finish all Express concepts, we can build UI using jQuery. In Express.js, what are the topics we learned? In Express.js, we learned about how to design the middleware and how do we communicate with the database, how to serve the static resources, how do we serve the static files. We discussed about that. That means static resources and contents, how to handle them. Now one more important thing you should know about, so that is error handling. Error handling also you need to know. Express.js error handling, Express.js debugging. Debugging how happens in Express and how error handling works in Express. Server side, these two things we need to know. Let's see what is this, how to manage this. So what we are going to learn, Express error handling. Because actually it is a JavaScript based technology. In JavaScript based technology, how error handling works. In JavaScript based technology, already you learned in JavaScript. So error handling is managed by using exception handling. You learned exception handling now? In JavaScript, you learned exception handling. The same concept you need to implement here. But what is advantage here is in JavaScript, what is problem of exception handling you learned? In JavaScript, you learned exception handling. What problem in exception handling you learned? In JavaScript, exception handling statements you learn try, catch, throw, finally. You learn now. What is the issue in that? I told you one problem with exception handling in JavaScript. What is that issue? What is that issue? Exception handling works, but what is the issue? The problem is JavaScript don't have any error library. If JavaScript don't have any error library, it cannot catch the errors and report the errors. You have to explicitly throw the errors and catch the errors. Remember that? No? Right? In exception handling, when you learned about statements, JavaScript statements, what statements we learned in JavaScript? Selection statements, iteration and looping control statements, so jump statements, exception handling statements. There I explained one problem. What is that? What is exception? Why you need exception handling? Why you need exception handling? There is one technical word. Exception handling. Why you need exception handling? Exception handling is required to avoid abnormal termination. Remember, na? We learned a technical word, abnormal termination. If any exception occurs, the application terminates abnormally. How to avoid abnormal termination of application? By using exception handling. And what is problem in JavaScript directly when you are working client side is you don't have a proper error library. So it cannot report the errors. But Express.js will have a good error library because Express.js is already having status codes now and it can identify the errors. It have predefined error library. By using the error library, it can easily report the errors. That is the reason as a developer, when we are writing server-side logic, handling exception is also very important. But one great advantage for us is these exceptions are internally managed by promises. But that means latest version advantage is latest version is using promises. Na? Promises are asynchronous. They already have then catch finally. What catch will do? It will catch the exception and it will report the exception. That's the reason it is very easy in new versions. But in old versions, we have to manually write everything. So you have to learn both techniques, but the modern technique is using promises. Through promises, you can easily catch the issues and you can report the issues. We can easily catch and report the issues. So generally, what is the point about exception handling? That means error handling. Already you know the basics. One point I will give you. What is that? Errors in application are categorized into two types. You know already. What are those? Compile time errors and what? Runtime errors. What are compile time errors? Compile time errors refer to syntactical errors in code. Refer to syntactical errors in code. If any compile time error occurs, then the application fails. The application fails to run, or you can say start. Application fails to run or start. So you have another one, runtime error. Runtime error occurs when compiler is unable to understand the instructions provided to application. Understand the instructions provided to application while using the application. If any runtime error occurs, then it leads to abnormal termination. Abnormal termination of application. Leads to abnormal termination of application. You can prevent abnormal termination using exception handling. The statements used for handling exceptions are: we have try, catch, throw, and finally. Try, catch, throw, finally. You already learned them in JavaScript, huh? How to use them. And what is issue also you know in JavaScript. Right. So what is this? You already know them. Actually, try is, it is monitoring block. Contains statements to execute. Catch. It is handler block. Catches the issue. You can say catches the error. It can throw exception explicitly. It contains statements to execute always. Finally is to execute always. Right. So one great advantage in the modern version is promises. They will handle a lot of things implicitly on. Earlier we have to write so much explicitly. I already showed you also. So what we discussed before, we were using promises, we were having callbacks. In callbacks, generally how to handle the exception is, for example, actually when you communicate with the database, means I am explaining the previous scenario, how generally it happens. I will show you generally. Suppose some test JS is there. Okay, so here let's say I will stop this API. I'm creating a constant Mongo client is equal to what require MongoDB and Mongo client. In old version, what we have to do is Mongo client dot connect with MongoDB $127,001,27017. Actually, in older version, after configuring the connection, here we have options. Actually, now we are having promise, but earlier we used to have a callback. This callback contains an error. It contains an error. That means it is going to catch the error, and it is going to have a client object. Means an error object and a client object. Now what this error object has to do? That means we need to verify, is there any error? That means we have to write a condition. If there is no error, that means if there is no error, not having any error, then we will put console.log connected successfully. Like this we give. We create database object, client object, we access the method and you work with them. This is the technique. Otherwise, what we do, we report this error. That means console.log, we report that error. What is the error? We catch that error and report the error. Actually, there is an approach of identifying the errors, catching those errors and reporting them. Generally, if you want certain statements to execute also, that means actual what you do, we can use try. In the try, we have to define the statements to execute. What are the statements to execute? Already we learned now. So in JavaScript, after that what? Catch. Catch will catch the error, whatever the error it catches, and it reports that error. Console.log, it will report the error. That means if there is no error, what to do? We will put all the logic here. That means if there is no error, do these statements. Actually, this is not required. Just we will put a message. What is it? Console.log. What is it? Connected. Later, we can write data and all these options. We have to catch the error, report the error. We have finally like options. Finally executes always. Console.log. So any message I am displaying always or some functionality. Now, these days in modern versions of Express.js communication with database, we don't need this. Why? Because now this connect method is not given like ordinary callback. It is given like what? Promise. In promise, what you do? Then indicates on resolve and catch indicates on reject. We have to write that and use it. But this is in the old version. You can see, means you don't need to mention that, but Express.js. So this is the official website of Express.js. In Express.js, where is their version? I will show you. What is that version guide? Yeah, this is the latest version is 5. They have the 4 version of this. Actually 4 version is also using router application errors. All these are where is the error router? All these are basic router methods. Securities. I need to get into the old version. This 3 is deprecated because from 4 onwards they made changes also. Middleware, body parsers are there. All will such error handling directly, catching errors. Okay, you see here the previous approach is callback technique. Callback technique, it is an error. And if error is there, if not error, then do some message. If there is an error, then display that. This is the technique now we are not following anymore. Actually, you see anything uses first one uses an error. Even the queries also. That means we used Mongo queries now. In Mongo queries also error. And if there is error, report the error. If there is no error, define the message. This is the default error. First object contains error. It contains error. But now we are not using this. Why we are not using this? We are using what? Promise. But without promise also we need to learn how to use the old technique, because companies we may be still working on that. We have to know about both concepts. So how to write a simple error handling using these methods, we'll see. That we'll see in tomorrow's session. In tomorrow's session, we will learn exception handling, error handling in Express, and debugging. That means exceptions and debugging. Debugging how we do in Express.js. These two techniques we will learn. Server side debugging, server side exceptions. If we know, few more additional concepts are there related to Express only. That we will discuss in tomorrow, right? And once we finish that, now we can start learning how to integrate this backend with the front end. I will go into SAS and jQuery. We will learn jQuery and SAS to communicate and design the front end. Okay, we will start one project after doing this. That means in 1-2 sessions, we will finish Express concept. Then we will start working with a project with both front end and back end. Okay, so mostly your people written screening test. Yeah, you attended that screening test, right? Few more companies are coming this week. I will post in my Instagram. Those companies are asking for people with knowledge of JavaScript and jQuery. Some companies are asking. By the time I will complete jQuery also, so that you can try for that. Right. So few more companies are coming to our Naresh IT. I will post in my Instagram in coming 1-2 days. They are looking for developers with knowledge of UI full stack developers with knowledge of JavaScript and jQuery. Strong knowledge of JavaScript, jQuery. By the time those two announcements will come, I will finish jQuery and SAS also, so that you can try them. Okay, you can just easily handle them. That's not complicated. Okay, I will post them in the next session. Right, mostly in 1-2 days, I will post those opportunities. They are in Hyderabad location only, and you have to attend offline. On campus drive will be there. No online test will be there. Only offline, their campus location you have to go. I will post them. Okay, right? Yeah. Tomorrow we'll continue.